All right, hey guys, Mr. Kyle Myers, Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. So today I want to go over a couple problems that they're a little weird looking. So we're going to take a look at those things and see why they're weird and what that has to do with changing the amount of answers you might have and that sort of thing. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this. So the first one here, 1A, we'll do this one in blue maybe. This one is 2 plus 5 cosine of 3x equals 4. So we have to solve for x and figure out all the x values that would work in the interval of 0 to pi. So a couple things. Whenever you have a regular interval, all right, so normally your interval is from 0 to 2 pi or 0 to 360 if they're using radians or whatever, or degrees. So if we go from 0 to 2 pi, that's like a whole circle. That's 360, that's the whole circle. So in the whole circle, there's 4 quadrants, which means if I'm looking for a positive answer, so if it was negative versus positive, so now I just made it negative. If it's negative, I'm looking for the 2 negative quadrants of cosine. And there are 2 negative quadrants for cosine, but I'm looking for the positive one. So I'm looking for the 2 positive quadrants of cosine. But that's on a normal interval. If you shrink the interval halfway, you have half the amount of answers. That's how the interval thing works. So from 0 to 2 pi, you would normally have 2 answers, sometimes 1, sometimes none, but usually 2. Usually 2. But if I have from 0 to pi, then I'm expecting like maybe 1 answer. Or maybe there's just not an answer at all. I don't know. But then there's this other thing that you can do to change the amount of answers you might have. So normally you have 2 answers. And that changes if you change the interval. But here, that 3x thing, it basically means exactly what it says. So like, you ever heard of like, I'm going to like 10x everything I do. Like you're going to, like really beef it up. You're going to throw some steroids in there. So 3x would be like 3 times the answers. That's literally how you're supposed to read it. Is like if you see 3x, that means you're going to have 3 times the answers. Well, right now the interval is from 0 to pi, so I should have like 1 answer. And then I should have 3 times that many because of the 3x. So I'm looking for about 3 answers here. Okay? So you're like, well, why does that even matter? Like, aren't you just going to solve it and just get the answer? Like, yes, but it is helpful to know how many answers we should have, because if we're missing some, we need to know how to get the other. So I'm looking for 3. It could be less, but I'm looking for 3 answers here on the interval from 0 to pi. So let's go ahead and solve this bad boy. I'm going to do this over here. 2 plus 5 cosine 3x equals 4. Okay. And the other reason why there's 3 times as many answers is because on the interval from 0 to x to pi, if I want to figure out how many answers there are for 3x, which I do, then I multiply by 3 times by 3. So this is another way to look at it. You don't have to necessarily do it like this. But for 3x, if I'm going to solve for that guy, which I do, I don't want to solve it all the way down to x just yet. I want to solve it just for what's inside the parentheses first, and you'll see why in a second. But we just want to solve for what's inside the parentheses. I'm going to have, really my interval is like from 0 to 3 pi here, which is why I should have like 3 answers. So let's go ahead and do math. Math happens here. So PEMDAS and SADMEP. PEMDAS is the order of operations. SADMEP is the like kind of the reverse order of operations, right? So SADMEP. I want to subtract or add something on both sides first. Okay, well 2's hanging out over here. I can subtract that. Okay, and then I get 5 cosine 3x equals 2. All right, I just did subtract. If I did a subtract, and there's no other number that usually you just do one of them, so I don't really do an add. I did a subtract, I don't really do an add. I'm going to move on to divide. I'm going to divide both sides by 5. Divide both sides by 5. Cosine 3x equals 2/5. Now, here you want to stop. There's not going to be any multiplying either. No exponents. Cosine is sort of like a parentheses. It's a grouping, so it would fall under P for parentheses. But before I do that, you want to pause, because cosine and sine, if if they're equal to a number that's greater than 1 or less than -1, no answer. Because whenever you look at the waves for sine and cosine, sine starts at the origin, it goes like whoop, 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 whoop. And then cosine starts up here and goes whoop, 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 whoop. They both do that. They go from -1 at the lowest to 1 at the highest, because on a circle, on a unit circle, you're not going to have any values that are less than -1 and more than 1. So if that number is outside of that -1 to 1 range, I don't have to go any further. I don't have an answer. And you actually don't really need to know that necessarily. You would plug it into a calculator and you'd get an error message. So then at that point you would be like, oh, okay, so I don't have an answer. And it's kind of a letdown because you're like, you kind of want an answer because you already did all this work, but you know, whatever. So anyways, calculator time. Boop, 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 boop. So I got to make sure I'm in the right mode. What kind of mode do I want to be in? Well, my interval tells me the mode. The mode for the interval is in radians because I have a pi there. So I want to be in radian mode. Okay, so change it to radian mode. It was in degree mode, so I'm good thing I checked. So then I want to do cosine inverse of 2/5. That actually didn't show that. You would technically like take the cosine inverse of both sides. So 3x is equal to the cosine inverse of 2/5. Type that in. And I get 1.16. So 3x equals 1.16. Whoa. Okay. And that's a radian. Because remember, I have it in radian mode. So that spit out on radian. Ugh, that's kind of weird because, you know, when you're using a graphing calculator, it doesn't give you things in radians. And it's hard to say what that would be like in terms of pi. You could like approximate it, but let's just keep it. Let's do this. What about I don't know what 3 pi is. Why don't we just figure out what that is as like a number? It's 9.42. Okay, so now I've got everything in like decimal form, so that's like a little bit better. So 1.16. This is where it gets kind of hard. So bear with me here. We want to stop here because on a unit circle, I want to go all the way around the unit circle and then a half a turn, and it's positive 1.16. Let's see what pi over 2 is, because pi over 2 would be 90 degrees, right? Pi over 2 would be 1.57. So 1.16 is in the first quadrant, which makes sense because cosine and everything else is positive in the first quadrant. So 1.16 would be like right here. All right, there's one of our answers, 1.16. But cosine, all sand tastes crumbly, or crappy, but crappy is like, I don't know. It's like not a cuss word, but it's also like worse than saying poop. I don't know. Anyway, so all sand tastes crumbly, or all sand tastes crappy if you want to be like a little bit more PG-13. All sand tastes crumbly, which is an acrostic for all, meaning all things are positive. Sine is positive in second quadrant. Tangent's positive in the third quadrant, and cosine's positive in the fourth quadrant. So we want to find the other positive thing, which means we want to be in the fourth quadrant. If we want to be in the fourth quadrant, then we have to get to the fourth quadrant, so we got to rotate. So then what we do is, okay, well this angle is 1.16 radians away from the horizontal, and all the equivalent angles are the same amount away from the horizontal, aka reference angles. So I need to go down from 2 pi. I don't want to do the negative. I don't want to say negative 1.16 because negative 1.16 would work, but it's outside my interval because my interval has to start at 0. So 1.16, I could start with negative 1.16. That would be this angle down here, negative 1.16, and then I could just add 2 pi to it. So plus 2 pi, and I get 5.12. All right, so 5.12. There we go. There's my other answer. But wait, I said there was going to be 3 answers, didn't I? We're going from 0 to pi in the original interval, so there should only be 1 answer. But then since there's a 3x here, I 3x my answers. Should have 3 answers. Well, the other answer is when you go around, you go past the 2 pi mark and you keep going. Well, I already have the angle. It's right here. I I just didn't say what that angle was, like if I were to go around the circle once first. So what I want to do then is just take 1.16, which is in the same spot, and then just add 2 pi to that, plus 2 pi, and I get 7.44. Now look, that's less than 9.42. I wrote 9.42 there. That's less than that, so we're good. So I have 3 answers, 7.44. And there we go. So I found my 3 answers. This is tricky. I know this is like maybe a little difficult if you're kind of struggling with this topic, but you've got to find all your answers before you completely solve for x. You got to break open the cosine or the sine or the tangent or whatever. You got to break that open first. And then right after you break that open, you stop and you find all your answers. And then you finish solving for x. All right, so I divide all of this by 3. And those are all of my final answers. All right, so x is equal to 1.16 divided by 3, which is, I have my calculator to automatically round to 2 decimal places, so I'm just going to round to that many. If you need to round to more decimal places than that, that's fine. I just have mine to automatically round to 2 decimal places right now. And it's actually because of this really cool program that I made that displays a bunch of answers, and so they need to be rounded really well so it can display all the answers. I'll see if I can put that link in the description below for that video. It's a really cool program, and I'll put the steps on there. I keep saying I'm going to have the steps on there, and then the steps are just really annoying to write out, so I haven't gotten around to it yet. Procrastinators unite! There's your 3 answers. So x equals 0.39, x equals 1.17, and x equals 2.48, and those are all in radians, right? Our interval was in radians, so our answers need to be in radians. Okay, so for sake of time, I think I'm not going to do all of these. If this is you, by the way, I didn't say what the topic was, but this is page 432 of a book titled Mathematics, Analysis, and Approaches SL. It's sort of like IB pre-calc, kind of. So if that's you, then this book might be the one that you're using, and this could be helpful to help you with your homework assignment. So that's where it's coming from. These are answers from that. I think I'm just going to do one more for this. And let me know in the comments below if you want me to work out the other 2 solutions or one that I didn't work out. But I'm going to go ahead and just go to 1B, since I kind of wanted to focus on this idea of having multiple answers. And these do too, but these are a little bit more complex, and I feel like another video on those might be more helpful. So I'm actually just going to do 1B here and come off to the left-hand side and do that. Now notice the interval is still from 0 to pi, so I still want to do radians, 0 to pi. I still want to do radians then. I want my answer to be in radians, so I don't need to change my mode anymore. My mode was already in radians. But I'm going to have 2x the answers. So I should have 2 answers. If I have an interval that goes from 0 to pi, it's only half the circle. But then if I times it by 2, I get the whole circle again. So from 0 to 2x, I would go to 2 pi, which is a normal interval, so I should have 2 answers. I don't have to have 2 answers, but it's really likely that I will. And we'll see how that goes, because we're going to solve this bad boy over here. 3 plus 4 cosine 2x equals 2. All right, and then we use SADMEP. SADMEP. I'm going to use SADMEG this time. G for grouping instead of P for parentheses. SADMEG. It's a shark that's sad. Okay, so I'm gonna solve. I'm gonna do subtraction on both sides. Minus 3. Boom, boom, 4 cosine of 2x equals negative 1. Oh, let me make sure I don't forget that there's a negative on that 1. I put my negative right next to the equal sign. Whoops. So then, no adding, but there's some dividing, some division. All right, so we could do that. Cosine of 2x equals negative 1/4. And remember what I said earlier, we pause because, there are in parentheses on there. So we want to pause because, remember, the answer has to be for sine and cosine only. For all the other stuff, they can be whatever because they do the asymptote thing. But sine and cosine are just these nice little waves. Little waves. Like where I live at in Florida, I'm closer to the west coast than on the east coast. And on the west coast, it's next to the Gulf of Mexico. and they're just nice little waves. Versus you go to the East Coast and you're bordering the Atlantic Ocean, and there's bigger waves, and you can actually surf on them. It's actually kind of cool, but I don't know how to surf. But I try really hard sometimes. But so this is good. This is good because it's between -1 and 1. So we will have an answer. We will. 2x equals cosine inverse of -1/4. And remember, we stop there because we pried open the cosine and then we stop. And then we hammer time. So then we figure out what is the cosine inverse of -1/4. Calculator, tell me the answer. It is 1.82. 1.82. Ho, ho, ho. Se habla español. So then we want to figure out, we have a normal interval here. We just want to go all the way around the circle once. So I just use a regular circle. And I should be looking for 2 answers. Well, the 1.82 thing, remember, pi over 2, pi divided by 2 is 1.57. Huh. Pi over 2 is 1.57. 1.82 is bigger than that, which means it's in the second quadrant. It makes sense, though, because if you think about it, this time I had a negative. I was trying to find the cosine inverse of a negative number, so I want to be in a negative quadrant. All sand tastes crumbly. Cosine is positive in quadrants 1 and 4, which means it's negative in quadrants 2 and 3. We have the quadrant 2 answer. We just need the quadrant 3 answer. But wait, if I have 1.82, how am I going to figure out how much to go to get to quadrant 3? Because don't I even know how far away from pi 1.82 is? Well, yeah, if I need to figure out how far away from pi it is, just subtract by pi. So pi minus second negative sign does answer. So pi minus the answer. Oh, we got 1.57. Okay. Well, that kind of makes... Oh, I was looking at pi over 2. Psh, no duh. All right, so 1.82 actually. Let's look at 1.82. So I want to do pi minus 1.82. That gives me 1.32. Okay, why is that important? Well, if 1.82 is this angle from here to here, and I subtract from pi, it would give me that angle, which is the angle that I need. That's the reference angle. 1.32 is the reference angle, which you could also find out by doing cosine inverse of positive 1/4. And look at that, I get 1.32. So that would be the quadrant 1 answer. Well, quadrant 1 answer would be the reference angle as well. Quadrant 1 angle is a reference angle. So the reference angle is 1.32. Why is that important? Because in order to get the quadrant 3 answer, what I do is I go, okay, I need to get here, and I need to go all the way around. That, I don't know if you can see that. That's in my angle marker. It's really big and bold so you can see it. So the angle marker is going to be pi. I go halfway around the circle, and 1.32 more than that. So pi plus 1.32, and I get 4.46. So that is the quadrant 3 answer. I just found it. I found the quadrant 2 answer and the quadrant 3 answer, both the quadrants where cosine is negative because I have a negative 1/4. And there we go. Now I just do one more step. Now that I found both of my answers, I divide by 2 to get the answer because, you know, we need the answer. So then I just do a little bit more math. That one actually, that's not too bad. 1.8, that's like 18. Half of that would be 9, right? So that's 0.91. Oh, quick maths. And then this is really cool. 4 and 4 and 6 are all even numbers. Just divide each digit by 2, 2.23. Ho, ho, ho. Didn't need a calculator for that guy. And there's your answers. X is 0.91 and 2.23. And that is it. I'm not going to do number 3 unless you really want me to. Let me know in the comments if you really want me to do number 3. But there you go. Here's las respuestas. Por el número 1, letra A y B. And let me know in the comments below if I sound like a gringo. I'm still working on it. Still working on the accent. sometimes I can. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to see another video on a topic like this, let me know, or more SAT stuff, or maybe I've been neglecting you in geometry over there, or Algebra 1. I kind of tend to do more pre-calc and SAT stuff because I tutor more people that are in pre-calc and SAT stuff on Mondays, and today's Tuesday. So anyways, if you haven't also gotten my awesome free guide, The 5 Math Mistakes That Everyone Makes and How to Avoid Them, it's on my website, Myers Mathematics. My website is going to do a bit of a change. So if you've been to the website before, it's going to look a little bit different. I'm moving to a new host, website hosting person. So that's going to look a little different. And the course content that I'm going to be creating and free stuff that I'm going to be creating is going to look a little different because I'm moving everything over to a new platform. So just a heads up on that, but you can still reach me at all the same places. So anyways, have a great one. This has been Mr. Kyle, Myers Mathematics, and I'll see you again in another episode really